Right. So you understand the challenges. Now you have to come back with some kind of design. They said, hey, we're not AWS people. Can you please help us with how the solution is going to look like and maybe some kind of pricing, okay? So your second meeting is going to be a whiteboard delivery. Okay, so here's the architecture that I put together. Okay, you're in the customer meeting and you throw this at them. What's good, what's bad? Tell me. And yes, Mendix, this is suitable for IoT solution. Absolutely. You guessed it right. There's AWS IoT Core. Don't look at the services. It really doesn't matter what service is in there. It absolutely doesn't matter. But tell me what's good, what's bad. Like I just threw a design at you. Like, you know, tell me what's good, what's bad. Too much jargon. Okay. Random word for non-tech people. Well, at this point, you have agreed that this is going to be a technical meeting where you're going to be a whiteboard delivery. So it's okay to have technical people in the room and to have some, you know, some technical words. Looks like data lake, but I don't see. Business objectives are not present. Okay. Well, okay. So I'll tell you what is really wrong with this design. It's a lot of information to process for someone who is not familiar with AWS. Okay. If you throw this, I mean, people are just going to navigate around. They will think, am I expected to know what's on the design? They will not get it, okay? So too much details, it's too much. Okay, so there's a way that we do, and I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to switch to, you know, what do we do? I have to say that. What do we do when we deliver whiteboards with customers? Okay, so let me share something else. All right, good. So boom, 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 and I'm removing everything. Anyone knows Draw.io? Have you ever heard of Draw.io? Yeah, okay, someone does. Anyone else using Draw.io or? Okay, good. All right. So it's one tool. It doesn't mean that you have to use Draw.io to do whiteboarding with the customer, but I find it super useful. Ultimately, at some point, I will have maybe an iPad Pro and then do live design with the customer. I find that the iPad Pro a little bit expensive, if you want my opinion. But who am I to judge what Apple can decide in terms of pricing? Okay, so basically, you are with the customer. You want to do this whiteboard exercise. So first of all, you need to tell them what you're going to be discussing. You're going to be discussing, you know, how they're going to connect their farm onto AWS and how that farm and how the farmers are going to retrieve the data with their application. Okay. So first of all, we're going to go step by step, and I won't be able to see much of what you are saying. I only have one screen today, guys, so let me just arrange this a little bit. Okay. All right. So first of all, you want to take them step by step. So you want to start with the farm, all right? So this is the farm, and this is where you are collecting data. And then this is AWS, all right? So from AWS, this is where we will find the services that will allow you to ingest your data in AWS, all right? The first service that I want to introduce to you here is AWS IoT Core, all right? Now, you can see AWS IoT Core as a point of entry for all of your IoT data into AWS. Now, I chose this service because it is fully managed by AWS, which means that you don't have to provision any resources. You don't have to think about its scalability. You don't have to think about its performance. You don't have to think about updating it or replicating the data. We do this for you. It's a fully managed service. That's what it means. And that's important because it means that you don't have to focus about these things, and you can focus about your application. You can focus about what brings value to your customer. Okay, so the application. Now from there, you are able to register your IoT devices on AWS IoT Core, and you're also able to secure the connectivity between your devices and AWS IoT Core. So to secure those devices, essentially, AWS IoT Core is going to provide an identity to your devices, so only your devices are able to send data to AWS, okay? And no one can just plug a random device and send something wrong, for example. On top of that, that connectivity is going to be fully encrypted, so no one can see the traffic, okay? Now that the data is in the clouds, we need to make this data visible to the farmers, okay? So the first thing is we need to have this data stored in a database, all right? Now, in regards to the database, my recommendation for you is to use a time series database, TimeStream in this case. And again, TimeStream is a fully managed AWS service, which means, again, you don't need to provision it, you don't need to maintain the database, you don't need to manage the hardware or to take care of the availability. We'll replicate the database for you, and the performance is going to scale with your needs. All right. And finally, you pay as you go. All right. So you only pay based on your usage, based on your business growth. Okay. From a security perspective as well, you can mention that TimeStream is fully encrypted, so the data is secure. But look at what is really important here. I talked about two AWS services. I talked about the operational aspect, meaning they don't have to manage anything. It's all done by AWS. I talked about the security aspect. I mentioned that AWS IoT Core is going to secure the channel here, is going to secure the IoT devices by giving them an identity. I talked about the fact that everything is encrypted on TimeStream. I talked about the availability. They don't have to deploy another database, another availability zone. That's already done in the background. Same for IoT Core, okay? And can you think about what I've done here by doing that? Oh, I didn't see that. Sorry, if I could zoom in. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, we'll just navigate like this. Right. So again, I talked about security, I talked about availability, I talked about performance, I talked about operational excellence. What is it I've done here? I've actually used the well-architected framework to talk about the technical value of the solution. Okay? So that is how you can navigate as well, how you pitch a service. It's not just TimeStream, time series database because it's good for IoT. It's fully managed and so on. Then if they have more questions, okay, tell us about how the data is stored in TimeStream. Then you can tell them, okay, you've got the hot tier for the real-time data. You've got the a cold tier for the data that is seven days old. You don't need to put this data in a hot tier. You can leave it in a lower performance tier. Then you can talk about more, more technical aspect if they ask you. But don't put yourself in the rabbit hole unless the customer asks you a question and then you also want to give a quick answer and move on. You gotta have to deliver a full architecture here. You don't have time to go in each individual details, okay? You wanna tease them enough so they see the value of how the solution you're putting together is going to help them to focus on their business and achieve their business outcomes. Okay. Now the use of TimeStream, it's a time series database. It's only a database for IoT data, for example, or for clickstream, for example, anything with a timestamp, okay? Right, the rabbit hole, you want to avoid it. Okay. Do you see benefits doing this diagram in meetings, explain step-by-step process? That's how I do it for people who are new to AWS. For people who are much more comfortable with AWS, maybe I could use the entire diagram and then, go through it, go through the services one by one. But it really depends on the audience. I would try to adapt as much as possible, actually. Okay. Now, you will notice as well, I've gone for managed services and not EC2, that stuff that they have to manage, super important for operational excellence. Okay, now let's carry on a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna try it. I won't be able to see what you guys say, but because I need to actually use a little bit. Okay, right. Okay, hopefully you can see that right. Now, to serve the request from your application, remember the customer, they've got this application, they need to get data from AWS. So to serve the request from your application, we will expose a public API using API Gateway. Again, it's a fully managed AWS service. If you are not familiar with what an API is, an API gateway, basically it allows your application, so it allows your application to send a request to the database, and that API gateway is going to handle those requests. It allows applications to talk to each other, an application to retrieve data from a database. It handles the request, all right? You can have people in the room, they don't know that it's the first time they hear API in their life. So you got to appreciate that any acronym that you throw at them, make sure that you explain, okay? Now, API Gateway doesn't know how to query a database directly. It only handles the request from the application. And the request from the application here can be, give me the average temperature for the last 2 hours, okay? So to translate that request for the time stream database, this is what we're using AWS Lambda. Okay, it's Lambda. So Lambda is a function, and it's a service, again, it's a serverless service managed by AWS that allows you to execute a short piece of code. And in that case, that piece of code is going to allow you to retrieve the average, temperature for the last 2 hours from time stream. Okay. Now, every time the API gateway is going to be called by the application, it is going to trigger the execution of the Lambda function, and Lambda is going to retrieve the data from the time stream database. It will get the data, return it to API gateway, and API gateway is going to return the information to the application. So the farmer can see from the application the last 2 hours average temperature. Okay? And then you can just move on. Like if they need to have some dashboard capabilities, say a big screen in the farm that everyone can see, then they are going to, they can use Grafana, for example, and then Grafana again is going to query the time stream database and then display the information with, I think it's every 30 seconds or maybe every 10 seconds you can refresh that. So it's almost like real time. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. The rest is pretty much, it's just like, adding the other layers, but you could see like how step by step, I'm just gonna go back to the chat, step by step, you can take the customer through how, the architecture is designed. Now, I got some questions here around Route 53. This design is one example of, how it could be. It's not the right answer. You could have many more services on top of that, or less services. Less services, maybe not. But you can have many more services. You can improve that. If you ask 10 architects to solve a problem, they will come up with 10 different solutions. So there's no right answer. I just wanted to show you the process of explaining and take people through complex, services, complex design, so everybody can digest. Okay, it doesn't matter what service is behind, it's more about the methodology. All right, so with that, I'm gonna stop there.